Down to the plans.
What part of Florida are you in, Lisa?
I'm in Fort Lauderdale,
Oh, okay.
so it's not, I mean, yesterday was definitely, some very, very stormy weather, and there were more tornado touchdowns than they have seen with any hurricane before, and some of them were pretty close, but it wasn't terrible right here. Other parts of Florida saw really, really bad, so we were very lucky, but a lot of people were not on my flight, as you can probably imagine. I am.
Oh, okay, yeah. I could imagine.
Yeah. So I'm sitting outside because they have not yet come to address my room, and there are some issues with it. So I didn't want to be disturbed.
Okay. All right, it's 4:32. We might as well just get started. It's not going to be an official meeting anyway, so we'll just get through it so everybody can go on with their day. Since this isn't an official meeting, we'll call it to order at 4:33. So there'll be no approval of the meeting minutes of the agendas. So we'll just go right into my board chair's report, which is kind of brief. The MTA has submitted their 2025-29 capital plan to New York State for approval. While a primary focus will be on keeping the system in a state of good repair, included in that plan for Long Island Railroad is to purchase a new M9As to replace the remaining M3s in the fleet, along with a few dozen additional cars to help alleviate crowding. Also, within the $6 billion that will be allocated to the Long Island Railroad, will be funding to bring the total of the system's stations that are accessible up to about 98%. We are extremely hopeful that this will include the Metzwitz Point station that we have been championing for many years. While there are no major expansion projects included in this particular capital plan, there is money for planned improvements on the Port Jefferson, or planning improvements on the Port Jefferson and Montauk branches, as well as possible electrification of the main line to Yaphank, where we have funding already in place for a new station. Sean Fitzpatrick, the Strategic Public Affairs AVP, will be giving us an update on this a little later in the meeting. Grand Central Madison will be getting a new entrance at Madison Avenue and 45th Street. This entrance will be privately financed by the developer of 347 Madison, the former MTA headquarters building, and should be completed by mid-2026. Ridership has been steadily increasing at Grand Central Madison, with approximately 40% of Manhattan-bound riders currently using the terminal. A study is being commissioned by Amtrak, New Jersey Transit, and the MTA to see how Penn Station can best be developed to handle the anticipated expansion of train service after the completion of the Gateway Tunnel project under the Hudson River. While there doesn't appear to be much in the additional Penn Station development that will directly benefit Long Island Railroad riders, other than possibly some amenities, I have been asked to participate in the advisory group that has been formed and have already attended my first meeting. Actually, attended my first two meetings. The second meeting was on Tuesday night. Long Island Railroad on-time performance continues to hover around 95%, but as we've said several times in the past, without timed connections in Jamaica, particularly during the evening rush hour, that metric does not necessarily reflect our riders' experience. And basically, that's all I got for this month. If anybody has any questions. Somebody in the office will have to keep an eye on if anybody raises their hand or whatever, because the only person I see on my screen right now is Lisa.
No hand. Oh, Deborah, do you have a question?
Deborah's got her hand raised.
Yeah, I couldn't
Okay,
find, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, thank you for giving the report. The concern I have, there's two concerns with accessibility, and I am not blaming anybody, but I was at a focus group with the Port Authority, and I do attend their meetings, and I keep giving them I keep reporting and saying straight out, one, that they need to maintain the elevators at Jamaica and not put the blame on the MTA and the Long Island Railroads. I want you to know, yes, I've done this regularly. I also said they need to work with the MTA police is Long Island Railroad staff because homeless, you can't get to restrooms. The issue I'm having at Jamaica is when the train comes in from Brooklyn, if that elevator is out, they don't have a service elevator to take me down. And if the escalator's out, it's going to be a problem because, as you know, I use a walker for mobility. And I don't blame, I don't know what to say, but and I did, because Hector asked me to walk through with him. I said, Hector, what happens if this stuff is out? Because how are you going to bridge me? And in case anyone doesn't understand what I'm saying, bridge. There are times when the elevators are not working and Long Island Cares will walk me through trains to get to the other platform I need to do. So there's no way, I don't think they can bridge me there. So that's a big concern, not just for me, but for other people with disabilities. And that gets us very upset because you say, I'm coming in, say, okay, here, I'm coming in. They're putting me on the track where it's all the way right near where the air train is. But my train to go, say, out to Babylon is on track 3. And there is nothing to get me up and down. And there goes my train. So I'm stuck. The other, well, first also, I want to say I'm very happy with all the new
Deborah, hold on one sec. That's absolutely an issue, and that's something that Jerry's brought up, that Andrew brought up, that we've all
I
brought
know.
up from the beginning of the construction of, we'll always call it Platform F. And you know, there are some of the designs that the MTA had, and hopefully will consider in their upcoming plan, is to add some additional mobility on the west end of the Jamaica overpass, because it is important that people with mobility issues and with luggage can traverse, particularly if they're going to continue to make use of Platform F as the Brooklyn conduit. Yes.
That's a very serious issue because, you know, if the elevator and escalator's out, we're all stuck. And that's a problem. And I've also brought up, because that's why I said at the beginning, that when I go to the Port Authority meetings, I do tell them they need to keep their repairs up and not just let it go, because it affects everybody. And we're paying customers. I make sure that when I get on the train, if I'm running late and Long Island Cares just gets me on, I'll use a debit card. I never not pay. You know, I understand. I want you to never bothers me when they ask me, can they look at my tickets and stuff? It doesn't bother me. But the part I'm concerned about is F, Platform F. It's a very serious thing. So but I want to appreciate what Jerry said about the newer trains, because it will be easier to get us on and off because they're more level. It's easier to go in and out. And yes, I did see the new elevator at Babylon. Really nice. Well done. See, I was saying the bad stuff first, and now I'm going to the good. But I just want you to know that we were there. I was very glad to see the new elevator for both sides. I know there's still much more work to be done. I understand, except that's great. But, you know, I just want you to know that the new elevators you've been putting in are also much more disability friendly, because a lot of times people with disability get nervous when we go in an elevator and there's you can't see us. It's better. I like the fact they can see us. So first I went with the bad, now I'm going with the good. But I want you to know that, yes, I know where to complain. I wish we could make signs bigger to say, if you have a problem, contact the Port Authority at this number. Because there's signage. I just want you to know, and then I'm not blaming MTA, but the signage on the elevator, see how that's the size. Is there anything you can also say to them that they need to make it bigger?
Well, you know what? There's no law saying that we can't, or the MTA can't make the sign. Long Island Railroad can make a sign bigger, say if there's a problem with this elevator, and give them a direct number to the Port Authority to call.
I would love that.
I mean, we've heard Rick Compton say that he has something on his desk that shows every time an elevator is out. And I've asked him if that includes the elevators at Jamaica. at the air train, and he says, oh yeah, but we've got a 98% something, blah, blah, blah. But it's absolutely something that we can talk about. And actually at the conference, it's not a concert, it's a conference that I'm at. There's a guy from the Port Authority from their sustainability office here who I will speak with when I go back down.
Oh, yes, I just want to add one thing, Lisa. I think you should know something, because it does affect us, unfortunately. A lot of times when we were at different events, you asked us to come, and the elected officials keep claiming to me, and I had to show them, that those elevators do not belong to the MTA Long Island Railroad. They're Port Authority. So we need to also educate the elected officials in the area and everywhere to know that those are Port Authority elevators and escalators, not the MTAs, because so if they know who's the one really responsible, it'll make life easier for all of us. And that's the point I want to bring up. We have to let them know, okay? And thanks for
No,
letting me go
I
on.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's funny, Lisa, you mentioned the word concert. I had a complaint, which seems rather valid. As they do gating, and someone complained that they were at a concert at Forest Hills, and they didn't have a ticket, and they wanted to buy the ticket on the platform, but yet it was gated. You couldn't get on the platform to get to a ticket machine, to get past the security. Basically, what the MTA did respond was that if someone identifies that they would actually have someone escort them to a ticket machine. But that does seem a little bit awkward, and something that I'll bring up at the next joint committee meeting.
But Jerry, so why didn't the person buy a round trip ticket, or why didn't they buy it on their train time app?
Not everybody has a train time app. And now there are technosaurs out there. They do have concerts for oldies, and there are people in their 60s that just don't know about train time apps. So we're all not Gen X. So,
right. But I mean, I would say that a round trip ticket is always going to be the best way to travel, particularly if there's going to be something that's crowded. If I know that if I'm catching a train, that it could be a tight schedule, especially because who knows if the connection's going to wait, then I want to have something so I don't have to wait on the line for a machine.
Well, you know that, I know that, but the person who is not a regular Long Island Railroad rider, who is just going in because they like this particular act at a concert, may not be aware of that, And then the fact of the matter is that you're having the ticket machines beyond where you're gating. It makes it a little difficult. Again, you can't please everybody, but I thought it was a valid point and something, we should at least bring up.
And they should make announcements. They should make announcements on the way. Yeah.
If you need to go to a ticket machine, please stop by and security will take you up there.
Yeah.
Alrighty, are there any other questions regarding the chair's report? If not, did Sean Fitzpatrick check in yet?
Sean hasn't joined us yet, so I'm just going to give a real brief update.
Okay, I was going to say, we'll go right down to your report then.
Yeah, first I want to say happy birthday, Jack, or as we like to say, happy Jack Day. And also it was also happy Jackiversary. Jack's been with us for a year, which means it's been 1 year and change since we put out our Omnidate report. And staff has been really hard at work updating that with some new recommendations that we will be sharing with you soon. In the next couple of weeks. We are, when I say we, I mean they, and I just go, wow, this is awesome. I've been working on some additional white papers and reports that are looking at some of the latest, we can call them recommendations to be nice, schemes, harebrained schemes on congestion pricing funding that the governor has raised, that we're working with Regional Plan Association, and we'll have that there for you in the next couple of days to look at, along with Andrew Randy. We're part of a 101 reasons why congestion pricing should move ahead, and that was on the 101st day of following the pause. I see that Sean has joined us, so what I'll do is I'll say that all of the things that we talk about when we talk about congestion pricing are talking about the capital plan that the MTA is now in, where there's a $16.5 billion hole, so that the MTA has put out a new plan that has a lot of good projects. Sean, you did miss the Metzo's Point reference, so I didn't want to let you have a day go by without hearing Metzo's Point. And I remember that doing, but that there's a new plan that has just been put out, and that Sean's going to take us through, but that there's a whole new funding situation that the MTA will have to deal with, and that we, as advocates on behalf of riders who sorely need a better system, will be continuing and joining that fight on. So, Sean, why don't we let you go? Whoever's hosting, let's give Sean sharing ability.
Great, thank you, Lisa. I would have been astonished if on today of all days a Mets reference didn't make it in. I would have been, I wouldn't have believed it was you. I would have thought, what AI creation is this?
I'm at a conference and I'm talking about congestion pricing, and I said, oh, and since the Mets won, and half the room went, yeah, and half the room went, boo. So, yeah. And I talked about why we need the money so that we can get the accessibility projects there. But now I shall proceed. Steve.
Great, thank you. And thanks for having me. Always great to connect with you all to talk through our capital program. So as Lisa said, we are now in the we have the MTA board at its meeting last month approved the 25 to 29 capital plan. This is the successor to the 2020 to 24 capital plan. One thing I want to say up front, and it's relevant given the intro Lisa gave, this plan is entirely on top of completing the fully funded 20 to 24 plan. So this plan is not a replacement for the funding that we still need pending resolution of congestion pricing. It's in addition to it. It's, because the MTA capital plan is designed in these sort of 5-year increments. So just that, with that sort of context in mind, I'll walk you through it. And this is, focused on the Long Island piece in particular, although I'm happy to answer any other questions. So there's no New York without transit is something that I know this group recognizes and helps advocate. So just make sure people remember that in terms of the city and the region's economic vibrancy, the sort of affordability and sort of access for people all throughout the region, and our environmental sort of status as the lowest carbon footprint of anywhere in the country is all because of the incredibly vast network of transit that we have and that the MTA provides. And there's no transit without capital investment. So we need to continue to invest in the physical infrastructure that enables all of those things. This is an image that we created as part of our 20-year needs assessment, showing, every sort of spot the difference between the left and right side of this screen is something that is addressed through our capital program. And so whether it is the rail cars themselves, whether it's the turnstiles, whether it's station components, some of the behind the scenes technology and infrastructure, accessibility improvements, all of those things happen because of our capital investment. And, conversely, if there is a lack of capital investment, all risk degradation and sort of other challenges. So this, the plan that we've put together for the 25 to 29 plan is a result of both a bottom-up planning approach, sort of exemplified by the 20-year needs assessment that we put out last year, as well as a top-down approach to make sure that we sort of were meeting sort of industry benchmarks. So the 20-year needs assessment, I'm sure this group is well familiar with it, but it was the most comprehensive look in MTA history, looking at nearly 6 million assets across the entire MTA system, rating them on a scale of 1 to 5, and really in a comprehensive way publishing what is the state of the system, what are the needs, of the system over the course of the next generation. Some of the findings were, not surprising necessarily, but were, alarming in their own right in terms of the scale of investment that will be needed to keep Long Island Railroad, as well as the other agencies, continuing to run. We found that 80 bridges and viaducts were in what we call poor or marginal condition. Those are the lowest rated. Those are the 1s and 2s on the 5-point federal scale that we used. 75% of Long Island's tunnels need significant investment. More than half of substations that power the actual electrical propulsion for the Long Island Railroad, half of signals, and a third of elevators. So those are some of the highlights or lowlights, depending on your perspective, of the 20-year needs assessment. Again, indicating that even as Long Island is, delivering 40% more service, hitting record on-time performance metrics, there's significant need within the physical infrastructure for investment. And that's really how we put this plan together, was focusing on meeting the state of good repair need. It doesn't mean that we're trying to bite off more than we can chew, and that we're not trying to deal with generations long backlog in one 5-year period. These charts are a little bit wonky, but they're worth spending a moment on. The light blue color here is saying what at the end of our current capital plan is in a state of good repair, what percentage of the assets of, in this case, subway substations, although you'll see similar diagrams throughout the document. And with the pink, the lighter red is showing you what's in poor or marginal condition. The dark blue is what we're going to address in this plan. And you'll see for substations, for instance, it's a really significant portion of what is currently in poor and marginal condition. However, that's important, not just because we need to address those things, but because over the course of the next 5 years, by 2030, we know there will be significant additional deterioration and decay with the passage of time. When you have a 100-year-old system, when you have a lot of assets, as many assets as the MTA does, that are 30, 40 years old, every 5-year increment of time is going to mean that more things need to be addressed. And so the goal of this plan is not to sort of wipe out the backlog. We know it wouldn't be realistic, given funding availability, given even just the amount of inconvenience that's reasonable to expect our customers to put up with while we do the work. We know we couldn't do it all, but we're going to make progress all across the program, and we're going to stay ahead of this decay curve and allow us to keep sort of a positive direction. So that's the sort of bottom-up approach we took. From the top down, we also looked at our level of investment and tried to compare it to some other industry benchmarks and have some other validation to make sure that we were sizing the plan appropriately. So one example of that is JP Morgan did an analysis for us that compared our historic state of good repair investment to other sort of similar private sector industries, things like the freight railroads across the country, utility companies, FedEx, UPS, airlines, Ford Motor Company, and some of these other operators of substantial, large industrial plants. And what they found is that the private sector invests significantly more in state of good repair and in its capital plant than the MTA has been able to historically. And in fact, their analysis found that an investment of something like $16 billion a year is what, if Ford Motor Company were put in charge of the MTA's sort of physical infrastructure, the private sector would recommend investing. Now, given the fact that there's been a backlog, they recommended, in fact, $23 billion a year to catch up. Now, we're not proposing a $125 billion capital plan, which is sort of what that would imply. But this was an important benchmark to make sure that we were in the right neighborhood and that we understood sort of what lessons the private sector would have for us. We also looked at independent reviews. The New York State Comptroller, and actually the Citizens Budget Commission did a similar analysis with very similar results. Reviewed our capital program and found an estimated 5-year need of somewhere between $60 and $90 billion. We were, thought that was a thoughtful analysis, and it was another important input to validate that we were in the right neighborhood. And finally, we thought through the impact of inflation. I mean, everyone has seen this in sort of day-to-day goods over the course of the last 5 years, even as it has started to, there's been progress made recently. That was also very much true for the construction sector, where 29% inflation is what we experienced since the last capital plan. If you just inflated the previous capital plan of $55 billion out by that 29%, you'd have a capital plan in the low 70s, which we actually come in slightly lower than with thanks to some of the efficiencies we have. But it was another important input to make sure we're in the right place. So all that leads to the proposed 2025 to 29 capital plan, actually at this point approved by the MTA, although still pending approval by the Capital Program Review Board for this portion of it. It included, $65.4 billion for the sort of transit agencies, New York City Transit, as well as the railroads and major projects and expansion, as well as $3 billion for bridges and tunnels. One thing that's worth noting is that this is by far the biggest investment the MTA has ever made in its state of good repair and in its core infrastructure, sort of in improving the existing system. More than 90% of this money is dedicated to making sure that the existing system is able to continue to function. So for Long Island in particular, it's a $6 billion investment, which is an increase over the previous plan. And I'll run through. It's dedicated to a lot of the most important things to allow us to continue to provide frequent and reliable service. That's really a touchstone for all of the state of good repair investments that keep service running, things customers see as well as behind the scenes infrastructure that they don't necessarily. Improving the customer experience, which is a way that we talk about how we are making the stations themselves a more pleasant, safer, accessible place to be, as well as taking action on climate change, both in terms of reducing the MTA's operational carbon footprint, as well as being more resilient in the face of some of the storms that we know are coming. So I'll run through a few highlights of the plan. A real centerpiece is purchasing new rail cars. There's $1.6 billion in this plan for Long Island Railroad to complete the retirement of the M3s from the 1980s. And sort of with new M9As, we'll also start to replace some of the coaches that operate in diesel territory further out on the island. And there's also substantial investment to upgrade the dual mode locomotives that allow for that more seamless service from diesel territory into the city, reducing, which is benefits reducing emissions, but they're also just more reliable and are able to operate more fluently in electric territory. This is important both because the new rolling stock is obviously more comfortable. It's fully ADA accessible, which isn't the case for some of the M3s that are, literally predate the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's important from a customer amenity perspective, but it's also really important from a reliability perspective. The chart here on the bottom right shows that the newest cars in the Long Island Railroad fleet have a mean distance between failure. So how long they go from between sort of an incident that requires them to be taken into a shop for repairs of 346,000 miles. The oldest ones, those M3s that we're looking to retire, are just 41,000. So it's a really substantial difference in terms of our ability to provide reliable and frequent service. Power is another substantial area of investment. As you'll see, this capital plan made a significant investment. A lot of that actually coordinated with the third track project on the main line in that sort of central area to upgrade the power system for Long Island Railroad. But there's a lot of substations that are in poor and marginal condition still. And there's a substantial aging curve that we need to get ahead of there. So this capital plan is going to renew or rehabilitate 16 substations, and we'll also be making sort of similar investments in the sort of other power infrastructure, including upgrading the third rail or replacing the third rail itself. Structures is another key thing. This is one where, as a percentage, it doesn't. The Long Island Railroad is in better shape than some of the other agencies, in the MTA's remit. but there's still those 80 bridges and viaducts across Long Island that affect actually every single branch on Long Island that are in poor and marginal condition. And so we're going to need to address some of the most urgent of those bridges, repairing and waterproofing more than half of them. And we'll also rehabilitate the Atlantic Avenue Tunnel, which is in has substantial sections of it haven't really been upgraded or addressed from a state of good repair perspective since the tunnel was created in the 19th century. So there's substantial work needed to make sure that the structures across Long Island and in the city continue to operate properly. In addition to continuing to work on the sort of regular or sort of state of good repair work of track replacement, which this plan will keep the pace up to make sure that their sort of track is kept in a state of good repair and that service is able to proceed. We also in this category have the more exciting piece, which is the next phase of the Jamaica Capacity Improvements Project. Continuing to upgrade sort of the next set of interlockings that will allow trains to deconflict some of the crossing maneuvers that currently happen in Jamaica, that lead to that sort of infamous Jamaica crawl, and replace some of the quite old, in many cases, switches with newer, higher speed switches that will, in combination with some of the operating things that I know the railroad itself is working on, continue chipping away at the Jamaica crawl. This is a construction photo of the phase that's currently in construction now. Hall interlocking, I think I have the right name of the interlocking. And we'll continue that into this next plan, which is we're very excited about. It's a long-term project. It's one that, the fundamental challenge of it is being able to do this work while continuing to provide Long Island Railroad service. Obviously, it'd be a heck of a lot easier if you didn't have that constraint, but we obviously do, and it's very important. So because of that, it's a many capital plan project, but one that we're excited to keep chipping away at and keep making progress on. And finally, there is a slug of money in this plan for continued investments in upgrading the regional network as a whole. So there's an $800 million line item in the expansion and major projects bucket that is set. We aren't at a point on projects like the Port Jefferson third track project or a second track project, the Montauk, some of the Montauk-Spionk upgrades that have been proposed and analyzed, sort of a more recent proposal to further electrification on the main line out from Ronkonkoma to somewhere like Yaphank. We're not at a point where we have a sort of construction project that is proposed at this moment, but what we are doing is we've set aside money to allow us to continue the planning and design and engineering side of it for these projects, and to have a reserve of money available to start construction or start some of the preparation construction activities where we see opportunities. So there's more to come on that in the future, but it's an important marker that even as this plan is primarily focused on state of good repair and making sure the existing system gets to run properly, we're not losing sight of future opportunities to continue to strengthen it. We're also, so those are some of the sort of core infrastructure things that we're looking at. We're also going to be improving the customer experience at our stations primarily. This is what this is speaking to. That'll include renewing 5 stations. So doing significant sort of, not just fixing a component here and there, but sort of soup to nuts, fixing up 5 stations throughout the island. Another important piece here is that we're going to be replacing some of the escalators and elevators across Long Island Railroad's portfolio to stay ahead of their normal replacement cycle. And finally, this has gone a little bit under the radar, but as we have transitioned to Grand Central Madison service, one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten from customers is frustration with some of the transfers at Jamaica, especially when people have to switch platforms. We have we have a project in this plan to improve circulation at Jamaica by adding escalators to that new western bridge, so that it's easier for folks who are sort of on that part of the platform to get up and transfer over to another platform. more easily and just improve pedestrian flow at Jamaica. Accessibility is also a key project that will be a key thing. Long Island is it's very exciting. Long Island is ahead of in many ways, certainly the subway system, but also Metro North to some extent in accessibility. But we see opportunities in this plan to continue the drive towards making the system fully accessible. We'll get to 98% by making at least 4 more stations accessible. You'll notice, eagle-eyed observers will notice there's 5 stations listed on the thing here. That's because in projects like, especially Metz Willits, as Lisa's heard me say, and East New York, there's potential funding opportunities with other partners, like the folks who are doing so well in the playoffs right now at Metz Willits, and some potential federal opportunities at East New York that we're pursuing. So our hope is that we may end up being able to do all of them, but we're committing that we'll do at least 4, and we'll sort of let some of the funding opportunities dictate the prioritization over the course of this plan. And finally, we're going to, Long Island is, there's continued work that needs to be done, and a lot of it's being done by just integrated into those state of good repair projects. When we do track replacement work, when we do the electrical substation work, we're going to be fortifying locations that are vulnerable to flooding. That's just part of everything we do now, in sort of the just as a fact of life, with 100-year storms coming much more frequently than the name would imply. And I mentioned earlier that we will be working on these dual mode and also work locomotives, which I know have a sort of local air quality impact. The new locomotives that are purchased are so dramatically more efficient and have not just carbon, but especially actually some of the other particulates numbers are reduced more than 90% from some of the older equipment that they'll replace. So we're excited to advance that. This is a map across both Long Island and the Metro North territories of some of these investments. It includes some things that I sort of only alluded to, or we're part of the numbers there. It's also just a subset of the projects, but it's this we really think is a very comprehensive investment in the Long Island Railroad's future across sort of the entire service territory, and we're very excited that the MTA board approved it, and now we're going to be working very closely to try to get us to get it funded and get it to implementation. Real quickly, there are obviously, focusing on Long Island, there's also similar story to be told across the entire MTA portfolio. And we'll be buying new subway cars as well as Metro North rolling stock. We'll be investing in things like the Grand Central Artery, which enables 98% of Metro North service and is in a really critical state of disrepair. We'll be modernizing fare gates. This is a rendering of the new fare gates that'll both make the system more accessible as well as make it harder to fare evade in. We'll continue to advance subway accessibility. And you saw on the previous map, actually, the Interborough Express has a slug of funding included in order to allow us to start construction on it. There are benefits for the capital program that go well beyond the MTA service territory. The previous plan was estimated to create nearly 60,000 jobs, $60 billion in gross domestic product across New York State, sort of really shared throughout the entire state with providers and manufacturers and design and engineering and construction companies from throughout the entire region and state. We're updating these numbers, with the new capital plan, but we expect they'll be larger even than the previous one. That has benefits, not just on a macro level, but individually for small businesses and for minority and women-owned businesses throughout the region, including, we've had a lot of success on Long Island with our small business mentoring program. There's an envy of government agencies across the state that we have, a really innovative way to get small businesses in the door, doing important work for us and able to help grow their local sort of economic power. And finally, we're delivering all of this better, faster, and cheaper. The MTA Construction and Development, the agency I work for, was created 5 years ago, sort of just after the sort of approval of the previous capital plan, in order to consolidate the capital functions across the MTA, make them more efficient, and make sure that lessons learned and good management practices are being applied to every project. And there's still a lot of work to do that, as we continue to sort of streamline and sort of make more efficient the process. But we have new sort of exciting results coming in every day that validate that we're really starting to make an impact. The Park Avenue Viaduct, folks may know, up in East Harlem, part of that Grand Central artery for Metro North. We're rebuilding what is from the 1890s piece of infrastructure without impacting a single train. And I'm sort of doing it with these innovative, hoisting sections of the bridge in place on the weekend without disrupting traffic on the other tracks. It's a really the sort of thing that just that level of innovation wouldn't have been possible without tools like design build and some of the other sort of methods with which we've unleashed the creativity of the private sector. We're getting projects done more quickly. And of course, on Long Island, the third track project, our first sort of major design build mega project, got done on time, $100 million under budget. That's adding up across the program to nearly $1 billion in savings versus our estimates since 2020. And it's letting us get more done. This is a graphic that shows this pace of ADA projects that we're doing for the subways. It used to be that every single project or every single station required its own contract, just about. And that meant not just the time to procure it, the in-house resources to write the contract, to negotiate it, the resources on the contractor side to mobilize, set up a field office. Now we bundle stations together so that what took us 15 contracts to do 16 stations in the previous plan, it's taken us 12 to do 52. And that's just an example of how we've been able to reach record levels of work, even as we sort of recovered from COVID. So all that's to say, these are some of the milestones that we went through recently. You can read the plan. I'm sure many of you have had the chance to it. I see Mr. Greif has its cover as his photo. So I suspect he's read it. But you can read it all at mta.info/capital plan. It's now sort of was approved by the board on September 25th and is now pending sort of pending approval or action by the capital program review board. So that's the 25 to 29 plan. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, can someone in the office check for people, see who might have their hand up, who might have a question? I can't do it from here, unfortunately.
Yep, we'll keep an eye out.
Sure. Let's put the presentation down and the people back so we can take a look. First, thank you, Sean. That was great. Thank you, Brian.
Yes, it was excellent. Thank you.
And Jerry, if you put yourself in gallery view, you'll probably be able to see everybody.
Oh, okay.
So Sean, I understand that. Thank you, Larry. That there's going to be a series of public outreach sessions too. The dog and pony show. That's gonna happen starting
Absolutely.
soon. So.
Yep. I think there will be more news on that very, very soon, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Do we have any questions out there?
Christopher D. Greif has his hand raised.
Yes, good afternoon. I just got word from the I just finishing my actor meeting, exec meeting. They just told me the first one is October 23rd at the from 3 to 6 at Grand Central Vanderbilt Hall. And it was
Okay, Chris, that might not be for public
It is.
information yet.
This is what they're just telling me, but there are more dates coming in.
Okay.
I think something may have been lost in translation. Just, we will confirm everything for you very shortly.
But also getting back to the question, as I saw the presentation, I'm very pleased to see that East New York Station is on that list, because that station right now, as I went past there a lot of times going from Jamaica back to Atlantic, that station needs love and tending, because as we speak, there are some areas that is cracking, breaking apart, and definitely needs some serious love and lighting and cameras.
Absolutely. The sort of project that is anticipated there would include a station renewal in addition to the sort of ADA access itself. So we would sort of seek to address it really holistically.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
Deborah has a
Deborah?
question. I've got one for you, Sean. Do we have a date of when, or any idea of when the two paused LIR accessibility projects in the current plan are gonna go forward? Is that still on pause?
They're sort of in the same boat as the sort of rest of the projects that are pending sort of resolution of the funding issue.
Okay. Deborah, before you go, and I should have asked this earlier, Jack or sorry, Larry or Christy, we do have our members at option. Do either of you have a question? Larry or Christy? Once, twice, three. Deborah.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in
good.
reference to the part of what you talked about, the Atlantic Tunnel, not just only East New York. Maybe we need to educate the elected officials that are in that area too, because they don't realize how old that area is and the structure. And I've been reporting for many years. I've saw cracks on the platform at East New York. The lighting's horrible. I know people who live nearby and they'll go to Nostrum first before they'll get off at nighttime, so that you'll be slowly trying to get it fixed. And yes, I've bugged DOT about fixing the lighting and anything that's under their purview. But we really, because I'll tell you something, former borough president and now Mayor Adams, I reported what was going on at East New York, and he acted like I didn't. So everybody was looking at him, including his staff, saying, she's the one who raised the flag. So we really need to educate the elected officials in that area, and also let the community boards know, because they really, if you have to get them at grassroots.
It's a great point. It's a very active, very proudly active and vibrant community in terms of, we're doing a lot of work there. We're out there a lot. The Broadway Junction subway station is currently in construction to get ADA upgrades, which we're thrilled about.
Thank
But
God.
there's a lot more. We have a very big footprint in the Broadway Junction, East New York area. We're proud of that. We have more than 2,000 workers work in the area around Broadway Junction, and there's a lot more work to get our infrastructure up to snuff.
And also, for East New York, there's no way I can go down the stairs, go through that tunnel and come back up because of my accessibility issue. Plus also, it's not safe for me to cross the street to board the train there either.
It's a challenge. We've been working to coordinate with the City Department of Transportation, especially as we've started some of the design for this project, to make sure that clearly there are some streetscape changes that are needed to make it easier for folks to get to the railroad station.
Red lights they need.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do we have anybody else with a question, or we let Sean go?
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Going
Sean.
once, going twice. John, greatly appreciated.
All right, take care. Thanks very much for listening.
And Sean.
Okay, Lisa, we'll kick it back to you to finish up your executive director's report. Lisa there?
Yep. Sorry, I just had somebody coming in.
That's all right.
Okay. So thanks to Sean. That was a good report on what needs to be done. And but there's a $33 billion hole in funding the next plan, at the same time that there's a $16.5 billion hole in funding the current plan. Taken together, that's about the size of the entire previous plan. So there's a lot of work to do that staff here is collaborating with our colleagues in advocacy on, and elected officials figure out the best route forward for some funding options and opportunities. And we've had some internal conversations, and we'll be continuing to have some external conversations. Brian and Jack, I'm going to turn to you for to weigh in also. Brian, you want to go, and then Jack, you want to talk about communication or social media? Brian, you're on.
Anything in particular you wanted me to touch on, Lisa?
Just anything I may have missed, and you know, anything that you'd like to add.
I think that's a pretty good synopsis of what you said already about the reports that are coming up. We're continuing to work with our partners on fair fares. This one area you didn't touch on. The city is in the process of implementing fair fares to 145% of poverty, and it's currently at 120. There's a council hearing a week from Monday that we'll be testifying at. We're still working very hard to get that expanded to the railroads within New York City. That's going to be part of our legislative push in Albany this coming year. So continuing to talk with legislators and our partners about that piece of it. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything else major. You know, we've continued to have good press around congestion pricing and the capital plan, especially the capital plan recently. You know, in Newsday and elsewhere, Jerry had a letter to the editor that they ran. Newsday's editorial staff has continued to be very proactive and positive on these issues and highlighting how they're going to affect the island. So that's been good, and we've been promoting that.
We had originally, thank you, Brian. We'd originally written that as an op-ed, but Newsday said, well, we agree with everything, so we're going to run an editorial, and you can just send a letter to the editor, and we may repurpose that because we looked at jobs and the effect on the economy that the railroad brings. So that's something we're going to continue to do too. Jack?
Yes, so I have our social media update. First point here is throughout the summer months, there were reports of crowding on the Montauk line eastbound at the beginning of weekends and westbound on Sundays, as well as occasionally Mondays. There have been issues with cross honoring on the LIRRCC during subway issues or service outages, I suppose you'd call it, with conductors not always aware of the recently announced cross honorings. There are ongoing crowding issues on peak westbound trains, primarily in the 4 o'clock hour across multiple lines. And finally, there has been some negative responses to the LIRRCC's recent tweet regarding the ticket checks at Penn before boarding a train, seemingly because riders don't understand the reason for doing so. And I think there could be an opportunity there for improved communication and explanation. And I would just add too that it's not just at Penn. I was at Forest Hills the other night, and they were checking tickets before and after the concert I went to. So it's interesting. They're really doing it a lot more often.
Well, that's where I got that complaint from, the Forest Hills concert. You know, that the person just didn't have a ticket, and the ticket machines were up on the platform, and well, you can't go up there without a ticket. Well, how do I get a ticket? It was almost comical, but
It's funny, but it ain't, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's something that those of us who spend any time at City Field, that's Wells Point, know you have to be ready to show it at any time because they're going to ask for it. I think the conductors are pretty good on board about helping people activate, really giving people a push. But I've seen a lot more ads also telling people you have to activate before you get on. And you know, when the East River Tunnel construction starts coming up in the next few months, that might even be an opportunity for, as there's an education program about that work, there to be a greater education program about ticket validation and the need for that.
No, I agree 100%.
In the different systems I've been traveling in, there have been some really good advertisements about why you need to pay your fare, aside from the fact that you just get, you know, arrested or fined. But what it goes to, why it's important. And at this conference, where I spoke today, people who've never been to New York said, well, nobody pays to ride the bus. So shouldn't you do that before you charge for anything else? So, it's definitely a topic of conversation. It's not as big an issue on the railroads, but it's still certainly an issue. Chris, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, regarding that station there, I have told people to put it onto the app, just to let you know, Jerry and Lisa. People who are in the disabled division, when they try to go to those machines, there are times those machines, they're out of order. And they're like, trying to get on the train. And they're saying that, how we're supposed to pay the train ticket. I had to tell some people, I say, if you're going to use the LIR for both directions, you should have the ticket already in advance. But at the same time, some people say, I wasn't expecting to go on the train. So what happens if, say, that machine was out? Or I thought they're supposed to, according to their policy, if they cannot pay or say they don't have the money, I thought we were supposed to write their information like an address, because it happened to me one time, and I did send in the mail the money for the train ticket.
You are one of the very few people who's done that.
Mm-hmm.
They've changed that, and now you have to show it as valid ID. They were not asking for IDs before. They weren't asking for IDs before, but now they're also stepping up their enforcement. I think it's two separate things. One is onboard enforcement. The other one is trying to get through a gated area.
Mm-hmm. But just to everyone know that there are times that station that does go out. So I hope there's something they need to realize that we should be reminding them that, and forgive me, I'm a little blooded right now. Maybe they just need to remember that station, that people are trying to get to that machine, but they see the train, they want to get out for safety concerns too. And they should, somehow have those portable ticket things when they come out of the receipt. Because I've seen some of them do that at times at the Met Stadium times. I'm not talking for disabled, I'm talking about also for who some could go down the steps. So I just want to be very clear.
When I take the railroad at Walt's Point, as soon as you come out of the railroad and you go toward the stadium, they say, here's a ticket window, buy your ticket. You don't have a ticket, get your ticket now. Yeah. If you don't have a ticket, get your ticket. So they should be doing something similar at Bar Hill.
Yeah. Because if they could do that in Jamaica, and sometimes
it's a very different kind of stadium, though.
Yeah.
Deborah, I'm sorry, Christopher.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Deborah?
Okay, I'm asking this in reference to fares, because now I got everybody listening. Yes, I want you to work on fares through the Long Island Railroad, but also can you add an accessory? This is the reason why.
Oh, Deborah, I'm sorry, we've asked that question. I know the question you're going to ask. We've already asked the question.
What's my question?
Your question is, why isn't it available for people who turn 65 on fare?
I asked you if you can have them corrected.
But it's so.
I didn't ask
Jack,
you I didn't ask you why. I asked you, can you mention it? You did cut me off. You don't know what I'm saying, Lisa.
Okay, but
Lisa,
okay.
I'm
You're right.
trying
I'm sorry.
to bring
Go ahead.
a point up. I asked
I
you
apologize. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is, when everyone's testifying there, please add in that your fares program discriminates against people the day we turn 65. We have to then pay full fare. And many of us, myself, I've contacted all the city council as well as my state assembly and senate. So if there's a hearing coming up, it's not just only me who could send in my testimony. I'm not going to try to appear because I have been having little issues with my hip, but I'm asking if people can put that in, even if you write your testimony, but that's what I'm asking. If you can, that say they need to look into all their policies that have been very unfair. I know why they did it, but you haven't.
Deborah, can I respond now? Because people who are over 65 are eligible for half fare anyway,
But not on accessory.
but they're not eligible for fair fares on accessory anyway.
No, only when you, from 18 to 64.
But then you should be, then it's not about fair fares on accessorized, it's about reduced fare senior on accessorized, not fair fares. That's a different
No, it's
program.
fair fares. No. Fair fares
Fair
left
fares,
us out.
fair fares does not continue past 65 for the city either. That's a reduced fare Metro card.
And they have, because you know what de Blasio and his staff told me? Well, you'll get reduced fare even on accessory when you turn 65. You know that's a lie, and I know that's a lie. I'm asking you also, not just only me, to educate them. I have the senior
But we're
reduced
not gonna
fare.
do that, we're not gonna do that for fair
Fine,
fare.
then don't.
We can do that for senior and disabled
Well,
fares,
what do you
but
think I
not for
am? I'm a
fair
senior
fare.
who's disabled. I'm 66, Lisa.
But it's separate
Forget
and distinct from fair fares.
No, Lisa, you're not, you know what, Lisa?
It's separate and distinct from fair fares,
It is
Deborah.
not.
It's a
It
whole
is
separate
not.
program. Yes, it absolutely is.
It is not, because this is what de Blasio's staff and him
He
told
is
me.
no longer the mayor, and he has no idea what he was talking about then either.
Well, they
fair
still
fares-
are in the same, and elected officials have said to me, you're supposed to pay reduced fare on accessory because you're over 65. They
Okay, but
don't know
that is not a fair fares program.
I
is what I'm
understand
saying.
that, but they don't know that. And every time I try to correct it, so if you would like to correct them, because you're the MTA, not me, you're the
We're not the
PCAC.
MTA, we're PCAC, but that's
So
a very
you can,
different conversation.
I'm asking you to assist us seniors who are constantly trying to educate our
Okay,
elected
then
officials,
let's-
and they refuse to
Deborah,
listen.
Deborah, let's talk about it offline, and let's make sure we have our language correct, so that we do have that conversations with them. We're not talking
Yeah.
about
It's
fair
okay, you
fares
know, Lisa,
on
forget it.
accessorized.
Forget it. It's okay,
I think
Lisa.
that would be much more helpful.
No, you know,
it
forget it. I
would.
don't care no more. I'm just used to paying full fare.
I know
on
that you care,
accessory.
and we care too, but
Now,
making
you know what?
sure
I'm
that we
just so
use
used
the
to
right
paying everything
program
full
language.
fare there.
I think we need to take this offline.
No,
Yeah, let's
I'm
take it
not
offline.
discussing anymore.
Okay, all right.
Alrighty, are there any other questions? Anybody else out there have any questions for Lisa or the staff? Alrighty,
Stu has
Going
his
down.
hand raised.
who's that?
Stu,
If I could take just a quick minute, I think you in the office anyway know that I've been asking the railroad a few questions for 2 or 3 years. I appreciate that they did finally respond to a couple of them last month. At first blush, the responses look pretty reasonable, but when you scratch a little through the surface, they don't actually speak to the particulars of what I raised, and instead are just sort of generic and maybe even misleading. So I think, I sent a follow-up. I just don't want you to perceive my questions, me dwelling, I guess, on parochial trivia while we're surrounded by these big crises. I heard Sean make a presentation of, a billion-dollar capital program, which is very important. But both he and Jerry talked about the rider experience, and that our lives are, the quality of our lives are based basically on this quotidian stuff as much as it is by the big stuff. And what I'm pointing to are issues that could be, if there are problems, could be corrected without a budget. I don't know if you know this, but on the Montauk branch, for instance, at Spionk, crews often swap out. Most crews swap out on the platform. Some of them wait in the yard, and that delays the train by 3 to 4 minutes. This is a general managerial operational issue that shouldn't be causing delays. Yet you see this on a regular basis. The crew shows up late. They act in ways that are unnecessary. So these are the sorts of issues that should not cost anything, that don't require this major capital improvement, but yet would make a big difference to the rider experience. So that's all I wanted to add to this. Thank you.
Alrighty, so noted.
Good point, Stu,
Okay.
thank you.
Did anybody have any old business that they want to bring up? Does anybody have any new business they want to bring up?
Larry.
No, just something that I mentioned earlier. I think that the railroad should put some ticket vending machines on the East End concourse. On the, there's nothing there. I mean, I've been buying paper tickets, and when I went down there the other day, I was looking for a machine, and then I asked somebody in the waiting room, I'm like, where are the ticket machines? Because they used to have a couple down there.
At what
And-
station?
The Penn on the on the 8th Avenue concourse.
Oh, the
And
8th
Well,
Avenue concourse.
That's the Western
Okay.
Concourse, yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, what? Sorry.
Yeah, that's
And-
all right.
Yeah, they just said, no, you have to go upstairs into Moynihan to get it, which is kind of on the crazy side. You've got access to, I think it's all 21 tracks there, and there's no ticket vending machines that, I mean, it's something simple and easy to do. I would think they were there at one point.
But I think they just entered into a new contract for new TVM. Maybe some of them will go there because the other ones are old. And I think they've been swapping them out, that we can raise that also.
Yeah, if we can just, I mean, it just makes sense to have a, vending machine there. I mean, there's so many people that use that concourse, and to have no way to purchase a ticket and force people to go either all the way up to Moynihan or all the way into Penn is a little crazy.
No, it makes sense. There should be a ticket machine, at least by the way the waiting room is.
Yeah.
That would make perfect sense.
I'll make a note of that.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, we should make a note, and then we'll talk to the railroad and see what, can be done. But that does make perfect sense.
I also want, Jerry, this is a separate matter, but you had asked about the North Passage between Grand Central, Madison, and I reached out to our contact at Metro North. He said that oftentimes they close. First of all, he said that he's going to look into it and make sure that this is not something where, as it is in the tweet, that it's closed before 9:15 if there's still trains arriving. He did say there are instances where if a track is no longer going to be used, then they do close it before the 9:30 hour, but that should only be in instances where the track is not, there's not going to be a train arriving before 9:30. So he flagged that might have been a possible thing, but he said he'll look into it in more depth and make sure that that's not the case.
I don't know. That sounds like a bullshit answer. The schedule is the same Monday to Friday. So the trains that are coming on Monday are coming on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it's not like, oh, well, they don't not have a train coming today. Maybe that's valid for Saturday and Sunday hours, and I don't think the Saturday and Sunday hours are the same if it's even open on Saturday and Sunday. But no, I think maybe someone just decided they wanted to lock up early and do something and close it by mistake, either by mistake or just figuring no one would catch it. But, all right.
That had been raised also by our MNRCC, one of our MNRCC folks, and it was suggested as an operational efficiency that they close that North Passage earlier, and it was roundly booed by everybody who uses it. And then they said, then the member said that they've seen it creep to opening earlier and staying open later. So maybe this is one of those times when it uncrept or crept the wrong way.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's something it should be closed at a certain time, whatever that is, and then they just assign it to somebody, and if the guy gets there 10 minutes early, it closes 10 minutes early. If the guy gets there 10 minutes late, it closes 10 minutes late, depending on whoever's assigned to, All righty. Well, at least we brought it to their attention, and hopefully somebody from management will be keeping an eye on whoever it is who's responsible for doing the actual locking up of that particular passage.
Chris, you've got your hand raised. Is that from before?
No, I have new business.
All right.
I just wanted to bring this up just because this is Long Island Railroad, just to let everyone know that the street naming for Edith Prentice is on October 19th. In Inwood, it will start at 11 a.m. So I just want to let everyone know that. So I just want to share that information to the Long Island Railroad Community Council. They are doing the street naming. The family will be there, as well as Q and I will be speaking. And I do have the sign from the 181st Street station with Edith did port to get that accessible station. So I just wanted everyone to share that information as well. I did email that in as well. And as you still see in the behind my background, the R211 set together is one. But thank you for the good presentation today. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. All right, last call for anybody. Any questions, any comments, or okay, seeing none, we are adjourned at 5:42 p.m.
Thank you. Happy Jack Day.
Thank you, everybody. Happy birthday,
Bye.
Jack.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you.